So when you got into the corporate space, what is it about it that you feel like serves productivity?
That's a very interesting question. Well, you have, depending on how large the company is, there's a
Mhm.
lot of moving parts. So if all of the parts are moving the way that they're
Mhm.
supposed to be moving, then that means
Mhm.
we're driving the business forward. So when I think of pivotal key players and I think of people who drive the business forward, you have these different departments kind of all working with each other, and there's so many initiatives going on at once. That's kinda like peak level productivity where you're not just
Yeah.
working on one thing, you're working on so many different things, you almost don't even know what you're working on. So, there's emails that's happen throughout the days, there's aligning that has to happen, there's
Mhm.
shifting, there's procurement teams, there's procurement teams for certain departments, you know? So, if a department needs something, well, who are they gonna communicate to? There's something in the system for that, and there are people that carry that out. So, the whole thing is kind of like one big old productive machine.
Do you feel like there's elements of that machine that are hampering productivity?
I think it's when individuals don't wanna adhere to what the machine needs. So, if you think about just like any other machine, take your car. It needs oil, it needs gasoline, it needs brake fluids, it needs brakes. But let's say if you wake up one morning and say, "Hey, you know what? I could bring the brakes to the car today, but I'm not feeling it. I'm gonna take a day off. I'm gonna take a mental health day and I'm gonna
Right.
put the brakes on everything." Well, that kind of can stall the situation. And before you know it, people are driving the business maybe too forward. And you were there to say, "Hey, is anybody gonna have eyeballs on this?" If we don't have you there because you're normally pumping the brakes, well, then
Right,
that's
right.
gonna kind of clog up the machine kind of thing. So I think people can disrupt the system, not allowing that machine to work properly.
What about people in management? Can they ever disrupt the system?
Well, naturally, we are disruptors. Okay. So, just by very nature of us kind of, being in this pivotal role, we kind of
Right.
disrupt what it means to say, "Hey, who's over here doing this? Who's over here doing this?" We've kind of made overseeing cool again because like nobody
Oh,
wants to be in the position of like, I oversee people,
right,
but it's
right.
very necessary so we can make sure we see everything that's going on to make sure all of these moving parts. Because if you're in this department, you may not have any kind of purview into what's going on over here.
Right.
So it's going to take somebody to say, "Hey, I just pinged so and so. They know that this is going on. Aren't you glad I'm here to kind of help mitigate any kind of future issues?"
Well, it's interesting that you say oversee because one of the key tools for the overseers during slavery was a whip.
Oh,
But you guys aren't allowed to use whips now.
no,
So,
no.
what would you say is the new, like, proverbial getting it back, getting it back. What would you say what would you say is the new proverbial whip that is used by manager overseers overseeing management in corporate of our new era?
Okay.
In a
And I
in a neo-colonialist era.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand kind of the layering and mapping of historical context of like how we got to this moment. But I do want to be clear, there are no slaves that work for me here. Okay, so I just kind of want to make sure legal
Clarify.
told me to say, "Hey, we don't have slaves here. We do pay
Okay.
people." We did kind of borrow from that overseer model because it kind of works for corporate. Okay. And it's kind of the only model we've kind of been following in America. And so, even right down to the way that we kind of like do our spreadsheets and keep tabs on,
Mm.
different employees and documents and things like that.
Mm.
That system was developed then, and we just
Right.
kind of added some tech to it. So there are some benefits to, what slavery has given. They've given America the management system that we have. So I'm glad we got rid of the whole like actual slaves being slave. I'm glad we started to
Yeah.
pay people,
Yeah.
but the role of the manager it's kind of always been kind of very pivotal to making sure that the mission is being driven forward. So when I think of like what could the proverbial whip be, well, now there are a lot of, measures put in place. So we don't physically make people do the work. We're
Exactly.
We're not
Right.
chaining anybody to a desk. That's your choice if you want to, because some people do that to kind of build in a discipline measure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
I think some people think, well, okay, how am I being punished if I'm not doing the work? Well, you might look at it like maybe it's a performance plan that'll kind of whip you into action.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe it's, in your performance reviews, it's kind of like the proverbial, did you, yeah,
Uh,
are you? So
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could say maybe that's probably kind of one of the layering ways. Probations, anything that kind of
Mm.
leads up to a termination, possibly. So those type of measures, I can say anything that kind of puts the employee back into the main frame of, oh, we gotta perform.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, it's really profound when you said that slavery actually gave us the management system here in
yeah,
America.
yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't try to emancipate it.
I mean, there's a lot of bad history out there, and it's just kind of good that we can kind of turn it around and use it in a positive way.
Are y'all enjoying the conversation? Oh, I know you are. That's why I need you to circle back, follow up, and close the loop on watching it on Patreon.